Who's presenting next door came in to introduce himself, and I told him that our room would be much louder than his. So if I say anything that you find remotely funny, please laugh really loud. Feel free to cheer. Well done. That's good. I like that. I like that. So so I'm Patrick. I head up the social, mobile, and innovation teams at Yahoo. My group is responsible for making sure that we line up advertisers with all of the social implementations across our site. So I'm going to share a little bit of that with you, as well as some work that our insights team did that I think you'll find really interesting about how the relationship between consumers and marketers is changing in social. I wanted to get a quick sense for what everybody in the room does. Are there any marketers in the room? So people that are marketing in social? People that are kind of community managers or own pages, is that? Any other big groups of kind of specialty in the room, things that you guys do that I'm not thinking of? Government?
Nonprofit.
Nonprofit? B2B? Anybody who loves social? Oh, come on, the room next door, I told you about this. Alright, so what I'm going to talk about today is an idea called From Like to Love, How Social Has Changed the Marketing Relationship Forever. The first chapter is social has changed our view of the world, and this is kind of a true story. And I'm not going to focus on the heavy political stuff because I do believe that social has changed many political things across the world. The stuff we saw in the past few years is amazing. But I'm going to talk more about consumers and how social has changed consumer behavior and the way that marketers interact with consumers. So I've had some trouble sleeping over the past couple of months. I've got this old New York City apartment, and there's banging that happens. So in the middle of the night, the heat just sounds like someone is hitting a sledgehammer against the pipe. So I can't sleep. So HBO had Lost in Translation playing on demand, and I caught this at 2 a.m. one night. So I do my best thinking, I guess. And I hadn't seen the movie since it came out in 2003, and it's a great movie. It's a beautiful, I think, story about people being in a strange place, finding comfort and relationship in a stranger. So if you haven't seen the movie, or if you haven't seen it since 2003, Bill Murray's character, he's an actor, and he's being paid to be in Japan to do these whiskey commercials. He finds a lot of humor and kind of pain in the culture, and they're making him do this weird hand thing here, where he's supposed to look like James Bond, and so it's truly lost in translation. And then Scarlett Johansson is the wife of a photographer, and she's in Japan because he's shooting a band. She's very lonely, though. She also has trouble sleeping, so this is her kind of staring at the window. But she's kind of a young character, and she doesn't really know what love or relationships are supposed to be about. So they meet at the bar at the hotel, and they start to develop this relationship. And it's kind of odd because she's this beautiful young woman, and he's Bill Murray. But they have this great relationship where it sort of borders on father-daughter, but there's a kind of sexual tension a little bit. I mean, it's really interesting how they do it, and I think they do it really well. They end up going out a bunch in Japan and become really good friends over the course of a week. So the story really develops with them getting close and spending a lot of time together. He actually ends up staying in Japan because he's having such a good time with her. So he was kind of pained by the fact that he didn't like it there, but then he realized that he wanted to stay because she was there. This is him on a Japanese talk show. So the movie ends with them meeting in the hotel lobby, and they're saying goodbye to each other. And it's kind of this odd goodbye, and they don't know what they are. I don't know if they're in love or if they're friends or if they're going to see each other again. But it's sort of quick and it's sort of uncomfortable. And then Bill Murray pulls away in a car going to the airport. He sees Scarlett Johansson walking down the street, though, as he's in the car, and he stops his driver and he says, "Wait, can you pause for a minute? I want to go say a real goodbye." So he walks up to her, and it's the exact goodbye that you want. It's the moment that these two characters are really connecting and saying, "God, this was something amazing that we just had." And he actually hugs her, and he whispers something in her ear that you don't know what he says. It's actually silent, and so it's kind of interesting intrigue. So now it's 3:30 in the morning, and I'm on my couch with the banging pipes, and I'm usually pretty good at suspending disbelief in movies, especially a movie that's this good. I kind of say, all right, you know what, that's cool. But I started to think, this movie came out in 2003, and this scene felt really uncomfortable to me. It felt uncomfortable because these people were saying goodbye as if they were never going to see each other again. And I realized at that moment, the idea of never seeing someone again doesn't exist anymore in my world. And it doesn't exist in our worlds anymore either. In 2003, there was no Facebook. Social media didn't really erupt. And so the idea of saying goodbye and maybe never seeing anyone again was actually legit, and I don't think that that's true anymore. Even the people that you choose to not connect with in social are still out there. Even my ex-girlfriend from high school, who I've chosen to not be friends with on Facebook, Facebook keeps reminding me that she's there. So this idea of permanent goodbyes has changed forever. And I started to think about, what are the other things that have changed? Oh, I actually looked on YouTube to find out, were there any theories? Any theories about what he said in our ear? And I saw somebody else had the same feeling as me. So, a couple of things that have changed about social. Number one is, I'll assume everyone in this room, for the sake of conversation, is on Facebook. We all now have a website. And while over the years people may have created GeoCities or MySpace pages, we now have truly put our personal identities and created our own website. So Scarlett Johansson and Bill Murray and their characters wouldn't always have a digital presence. We've connected to other people and we receive updates about them. So this has changed significantly. Our expectation that we will connect with somebody after meeting them and receive updates about them is pretty natural. Even people that you haven't seen for years, you're now getting updates around. There's a very public way to declare things that we like. And so think about this again. I'm naturally a very private person. Believe it or not that I'm standing up here telling you about my pipes. I'm naturally a very private person, but I publicly define that I like things. And that's a big deal. It's a big deal for marketing. It's also a big deal for relationships between people. Because now there's this kind of digital collection of the things that you're interested in. And then the other thing that I think is interesting is there's all these new rapidly evolving communication channels. The Facebook ticker, if the news feed wasn't fast enough, the ticker is giving you real-time information about what everybody's doing. And I think that that's an amazing thing. And then the final thing is that we've changed in that we now are going to be storing our memories through the Facebook timeline. And I think that that's an amazing change in terms of consumer behavior. I bring up all these things because I wanted to just take a moment in time and say, we will never be the same. This has changed us as a society and the way we think pretty significantly. And so this idea of goodbye or permanent goodbyes doesn't really exist anymore. And I believe that there are many other things that have changed about our society. And so I'm going to focus the next section on how that's changed in marketing. Because if we as individuals have changed, then obviously the way that brands and companies speak to consumers has to change as well. So the second section is called From Like to Love. Some of the information in here is based on a study that Yahoo did with BBDO, the advertising agency. What we set out to do was understand how the marketing relationship has changed. We uncovered some really interesting things, and what our team did was really liken it to the idea of dating and courting. And the terms I'm going to use are very much in line with how we all probably relate to each other, and certainly if you're in a relationship or have ever had one, you'll relate to them. It's strange that these things are involved in marketing, though, because they never have been. We called it advertising, right, and consumers, and now it's very different. It's a relationship. So the study I'm going to share with you was released about 2 months ago. And what we did in that study, by the way, is we asked two groups of people. We asked marketers and consumers a bunch of questions about how they think the relationship has changed. So that's the data you'll see. But first I wanted to start with a little example of what I've seen advertisers and brands, and you don't have to raise your hand if you feel like you're committed this crime, but what I've seen advertisers and brands do in their initial entry into social. And it's very interesting because if you think about that idea of relationships, this is almost opposite, and I'm going to show you how. So you've got a company, and this is a fictitious company called the Me T-shirt Company. They make the Me T-shirt, they make the Me onesie, the Me hat. So their products are Me, and they sold them well, but they realized that this Facebook thing probably had something going, and we should set up a Facebook brand page. So they set up a Facebook brand page, right? And this is their presence on Facebook. Then they realized they had to say something. So what's the natural thing for a company to say? Well, they started to say, which me items are you going to wear this summer? 10% off me this week. How's your day going? Going to shop for me by the end of the day? Really sending out marketing messages to people on Facebook. Now, I understand that there's a value to this, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't do this. But the key understanding is that in the last, there's some hope in that last statement, asking a question about you, but then it comes back to me. And I'm going to show you what some of the consumer feedback is on this type of thing. But then they realized they had to have people like their page, so they bought ads and they said, hey, can you like me? Over there on the right. We have new t-shirts. A lot of people actually like it. And then every time somebody liked me, their friends got to see me and they were asked if they liked me. So it's a lot of this discussion about the product and the company. This was a quote that from Mark Zuckerberg a couple of months ago, and I think it was a key turning point in both Facebook's presence and the world of social. He said the first 5 years of social have been all about connecting with people. So for brands and companies, that's how many likes you got, right? We're all in a rush to get likes. The next 5 years are going to be about what you do with those connections. And so we're in that phase right now where people have said what they like, but now what do you do? What's the next step? We all introduced ourselves to each other. What do you do? And if you haven't seen this, and I'm sure many of you have, they actually put a metric behind this called people talking about. How healthy is your brand? How much are they talking about what you're doing? So this is really relevant, again, as it gets into this idea of a relationship. So this is what we found in our study, and we use this kind of Prince Charming graphic to illustrate what the change is in the social marketing relationship. So what you're seeing here is how the marketing relationship has changed. The prince is the brand. The princess is the consumer. In the old relationship, in the Don Draper relationship, the advertising told you a message. It either told you that in 5 seconds when you looked at a magazine page, it told you that in 30 seconds when you saw a TV ad, but that was it. Now, in the world of social, it's much more about, number one, you have to inform. Okay, that's the same as an ad. Number two, you've got to entice. What can you tell me about yourself? So you're asking questions of consumers, right? You're not just saying, here's what I do, now buy me. You're asking them what they think. Then you're activating them, getting them to spend more time with you. So how do they get to engage? How do you raise that people talking about metric? It's a really important fact there. Reciprocating, giving them something for their participation. And then finally, that is when they will advocate for you. If I told you all to run next door and tell the guy next door that I'm the best presenter, you guys would probably say, prove it to me. Hopefully by the end of this conversation, I've given you enough value that you will cheer for me, make me look good in front of this guy. But you're not ready to do that yet. You've got to understand what value I'm giving, and consumers look at it the same way. They want value from you, and they want to build a relationship, and then they will tell their friends. I love seeing, and does anybody live in New York? There's a grocery store called Gristedes, which is a old school New York, and Gristedes has these yellow grocery bags. It's old, expensive grocery store. And on those yellow bags, it now says, like us on Facebook. And they have not given me one reason to like them on Facebook. It is so like, hey, let me jump in and not even buy you a drink. So there's a pretty simple list, and hopefully this is helpful. This is what we came out with our consumer study. Things that consumers said don't do. Don't objectify me. Don't only focus on the end result. That's buying a drink. Don't shout at me. Don't be fake. And don't make it only about you. So remember the Me T-shirt company just talking about themselves. Our tendency is like, hey, you liked me. Now let me tell you what you can buy from me. And consumers are telling us that's a mistake. What they say that you should do is treat me like your partner, not your target. Romance me. It's not what you say, but how you say it, and this is so true in social, right? You know, all in a social setting, if you don't like someone's outfit, there's about 10 ways you can say it, and 9 of them are going to insult them, and 1 of them is going to play right. Be real, act real, and make me feel special. So I'm going to show you a quick piece of research on all of these. So the first one, treat me like a partner. This was really interesting. So the question was, who was in control of the marketing relationship? 56% of consumers said they were in control. 46% of brands said they were in control. So obviously there's a little bit of a tension there. But the interesting thing was, 5 years ago, 49% of consumers said they were in control. So there's a huge lift in consumers feeling like they're in control. And 76% of brands felt like they were in control. If you ask this question in 5 years, the consumers are going to be way outranking the brand. Consumers are in control for sure. If I don't like your car rental, I'm not going to bother calling you and waiting on hold. I'm going to go right to your Facebook page and post it there. Consumers are in control. They know that. The second thing, it's not what you say, but how you say it. So this was, seeing the same brand ad over and over again, again, clearly it's a challenge if anybody here creates creative, but seeing the same message over and over again in a Facebook newsfeed is even worse. And then the other thing about speaking loudly or about yourself, again, like you guys have all dealt with salespeople. You don't want salespeople in social. And so that's what the consumers are telling us. Don't try to sell me. Be natural. The third one was be real and act real. So this is how people were describing brands, which is pretty unbelievable, because this is how you describe your best friends, right? I want a brand to be genuine, be honest, be humble, not focused on themselves. Do you see that continued through line about not focusing on yourself? Engaging. This is what I'm fascinated by, and one of my missions at Yahoo is, when I first got there, I started to look at the content pages, and people were kind of like, well, what's missing? And I said, there's nothing for the consumer to do. And it was like, well, wait, no, they can click on links, and they can click on ads. But that's not what we do. So we're striving to have a question or a thing for everyone to do on every page so that you can participate, and I'll show you what that looks like. And the third one is empathetic. Understand me. Like, so listen to who I am, understand who I am. We've got a ton of data about who people are. People are their true identities on Facebook, so you have a great opportunity to be personal. The fourth one is make me feel special. Again, do you see the common themes here? Think about your loved ones. Everybody likes to feel special, and this is the type of relationship we're in now. So 54% said brands need to tell consumers why they should care about them. And this isn't just advertising. Remember the Prince kind of running along. You've got to give people reasons to believe that you are valuable. And then 47% felt that an unresponsive brand should fail. So that's a really interesting thing. It's a challenge to keep up with social, but you've got to respond. You've got to be part of the conversation. And then the final one was kind of the culmination of all of this, which is romance. And I just think it comes down to pure human nature that we all know and love. If I meet you at a party and I say I'm Patrick and then I proceed to talk about myself for 10 minutes, you're going to be bored after the first minute. You're going to walk away saying, well, that guy's pretty full of himself. It is all about this natural human relationship where you've got to meet somebody, ask about them, tell them a little bit about you, they tell you a little bit about them, and then you ultimately build a relationship. This is how marketing has changed forever. No longer can you stick an ad in front of someone and expect it to work. You've got to have a dialogue. So I thought I'd spend a little time on where is social going, and I'm going to focus a little on what we're doing at Yahoo, because I think there's a lot of value in that. We are one of the world's largest publishers. We are not intending to be Facebook or Google. I'm not intending to give you a sales pitch here, so please don't think I'm contradicting myself. But I did want to show you how one site is activating, and I think you'll find it interesting. So the premise that we built our whole strategy on, and I think it's a way for you to think about social in general, when you look at your newsfeed, it's full of content. And that may be content that's created by your friends, pictures, but a lot of it's content based on what's going on in the world. You can imagine living in New York, my newsfeed had a couple of things about the Giants on Monday morning. We don't spend a lot of time thinking about brands. We all do, I get it. People that work in advertising. But the general consumer, the people that you're trying to reach, don't sit down and think, wow, I'm going to like Oreos today. They do think about Angelina Jolie. They think about stocks they own. They think about the sports team they love. They think about the weather. That content is how people connect. And I thought this was an interesting quote. You'll start to see us, and this is Scott Kelly from Ford, you start to see us, and in general the industry, move away from just the static push advertising and more to engaging conversations. And those conversations are happening around content. So this was also something that came out of that study, and it's along the same lines. Up in the study, the thing that brands, so remember we asked brands what they thought about one question, and we asked consumers what they thought about that same question. So the question we asked is, what's important to you when you hear from a brand in social? Consumers, 91% of consumers said they wanted shared experiences with other consumers. 56% of brands understood that. That was the hugest gap. And they all agreed that the brand should tell me what the price is, what the history of the product is, what an interesting story about that brand is. What the brands didn't understand, the marketers, the advertisers, that people wanted shared experiences. So that's a new opportunity, actually, in social, that you can create shared opportunities for your consumers. Give them a reason to connect with each other, because the consumers are saying that they want that. So we've created something, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen this. I always find this screenshot funny because people's eyes go right to that girl. But that's not the point. We've created this product, and you've probably seen a lot of this from Spotify or Washington Post, based on Facebook's Open Graph, where every time you read a Yahoo story, it gets published into the Facebook newsfeed and the Twitter and the ticker. So you see the bundle of Yahoo stories here based on what your friends have read. This is how it actually looks on Yahoo. And again, I use this as an example of what's going to happen to the entire internet. I'm not selling you anything for Yahoo. I'm just showing you we're leading the experience. You're going to see this everywhere if you haven't already seen it. So we have this social bar up top there. You see your friend's activity. When you click on a friend's, so number one, it starts with who you are. If you see in the upper right-hand corner, Matt's logged in. Back to when you saw my face in the upper left-hand corner, it's important to start with the individual. So Matt's logged in. When you click on your friend's face, it opens up their reading activity. So you actually can see what your friends are reading across Yahoo. And the insight is, for years, for the 16 years that Yahoo's been around, the editors have told you what to read. But now we know that you all want to know what your friends are reading, like-minded individuals. And so we're giving you a way to do that. An interesting true story. My brother-in-law is my sister's husband. He and I don't have a tremendously close relationship, but he's married to my sister, who I do have a close relationship with. I see him once a month. We talk. How's the weather? How's your job? Great, super. He's now using this, and it's really interesting for me because I'm able to understand what he's reading and thinking about. So now when I see him, I have super informed conversations about what he's reading. He's a staunch Republican. I'm not. We have very lively discussions about it, but either way, it opens up a new window into him, into understanding a lot about him. And so that whole idea of social discovery, but also insight into people, is really what we're trying to accomplish here. So you can see what your friends are reading, and again, that gets published out to Facebook as well. Totally opt-in for anybody who's got a privacy hat on. You can shut this off, and you can delete stories if you read that funny celebrity gossip story you don't necessarily want to share. The other thing is that we've developed this idea of conversations where you can actually start private conversations right here on the page. So we haven't gotten there in our relationship yet, but in theory, my brother-in-law and I can have a private dialogue right here on the page instead of having to go over to email or off to Facebook. So creating more of the social engagement around content has really been our strategy. So that gets published out to Facebook when you do it. The other interesting thing that we built is this. I was mentioning this before. We want every page to have some level of engagement on it. So the insight was, after you read a story, you generally, if you've really read it, have an opinion about what you just read and want to give feedback. So at the end of every article, we built this feature called a sentiment slider, which, if you blow it up, it looks like this. And it asks you a question about what you just read. So I read a story about travel destinations. It's asking me where my friends are. How far are they away? And I can slide that left or right. It's a simple engagement feature, but it makes me pause. It makes me think about what I read. And it is sponsored by a brand here. So we've created that kind of dialogue. If you think back to the prints, we're creating that conversation between the brand and the individual around content they care about. and then I could share that out to Facebook. And when my friends see it, they're going to click on that content and they're going to come back in and have the same experience. So think back to the 5 rules. We're working with our partners to give them content for their brand pages. And again, I can't say it enough. I'm not trying to sell you Yahoo, but I want you to think about how you can execute on your own. Sending content out from a brand page is a really powerful way to not always be talking about yourself. Imagine the Me t-shirt company sent out information about how the top 10 fashions in t-shirt. Or, you got the little onesie, so maybe it's tips about having a child. So for a brand to be authentic and social, you've got to say more than just trying to sell. And by us giving JetBlue, in this example, content about travel, they're saying something else to their fans that is not just about a fare sale. So 2 things that we heard back from consumers about this sort of stuff. And this is interesting because, again, the past 5 years have been spent with us all trying to get people to like us. What consumers said was the brand, JetBlue in that case, cares about me and what I like. And again, back to my cocktail party analogy, if I met you and I asked you, how's your life, how's your kids, you'd probably say, wow, that guy cares about me. It's no different for brands, and we've all got to think that way. Instead of just trying to sell, instead of Aristides trying to tell me to like them on Facebook, they've got to give me a reason and make me believe that they care about me and what I like. So nobody really gets paid on pandas hugging. The other thing we found was that this lifted purchase intent and brand favorability. So people actually want to buy your stuff more too if you care. A couple other companies that are doing similar things, and again, you probably followed this, but enabling people to connect around content. I love that this guy had a Vegas shot of his on his timeline. So Spotify is publishing to people's timelines. A similar thing. How do you connect with people around content? So driving more content discovery and discussion. And then the hottest social network, or the fastest growing in the world right now, is Pinterest. And this is based on the same kind of premise. I want to find and discover things, and I want to connect with people around them. We've gotten to a different level here, because this is interesting. You're connecting with people around mac and cheese, or Mad Men, or in this case, CrossFit. Things that I like, and I want to see what my other friends are doing. But it's this idea of us all expressing the things we like, and being able to connect with our friends around it. And there's a real big role for advertisers and marketers in this, because you're powering things that people are passionate about. So the final portion of what I wanted to share with you was how we continue to build these meaningful relationships. So number 1, our world is changing. The lost in translation moment, I think, is just a small example of how we're going to see the world differently now that we have social. So the one-way messaging is changing, and it's going to be an ongoing dialogue and a relationship with people and consumers. Some of the keys to it all, and you've seen, we've just scraped the surface on this. Everything will be personal on the web, and our lives will be better for it. We'll be around content that we care about and we can engage with, and as brand marketers, or as marketers, you can think about being in those content environments. And the final thing is we're going to declare more about what we care about and what we like. People will get more used to this behavior because you're going to get stuff back. Pinterest, as a great, just small example, is the more you put in, the more you get back from people. And I think it's a really interesting evolution. You're going to see that across the web. Declare what you like and get more of it. Consumers are control. Remember that? I think that's fascinating. This picture I thought was interesting because the guy's controlling an iPad with his phone. So what are those rules? How should you approach it? Treat me like a partner, not your target. It's not what you say, but how you say it. Be real, act real, make me feel special, and romance me. So I'll leave you with that, and this is based on a lot of research we've done, and I love that it is affecting the whole world of marketing, because I think we've only really begun to see what the impact social will have. All of you in the room are going to be able to drive this and change and evolve the way we think about speaking to consumers. And these are some good guiding principles. So I'm gonna open up for questions, and I love conversation. And I just got out of this leadership training over the past 2 days. And one of the interesting things they taught us was ask for feedback, both positive to begin with, and then some some constructive stuff. So after we do Q&A, I'd love for everyone to give me feedback. And I don't care if you think I presented well or not. I mean, give me feedback on these concepts, because I think that'll be valuable for the room. Do we think these? Do we believe in these? Challenge them. Tell me what you think, how these apply to your business. So first, questions.
Are you seeing slower engagement in the ancillary social things on Yahoo Finance versus your other sites?
It's a good question. So is your question, is the behavior different in different content areas?
Yeah, specifically, is the finance group slower to adopt?
Yeah. We only integrated social products on personal finance. We haven't on our sort of more investor side. I think it's a couple of interesting insights I'll share. One is we felt like, or we understood through insights, that people that actually invest in stock were not so hot on telling other people what stock they're investing in. Only if they wanted to, right? But it's not a broadcast activity. The other thing that's interesting on personal finance, we see a lot less sharing, but we see triple the amount of people clicking on those shares. So I think what it means is, if I trust my friend Tom, and he posts something about finance, he really means it. And so I'm going to go click on it. So higher return traffic on finance content than on any other content we see.
Yeah, the open graph stuff is definitely taking it to the next level in terms of sharing with your quote-unquote friends. But have you seen, even in a short amount of time, that that's been an option on your site? Do you have numbers of people opting out? And like, how's it looking?
Yeah, 10% of people opt out. 90% of people leave it on, the auto share. They do tend to be a little bit younger. It's primarily the 18 to 34 crowd that's leaving it on. There's our product guys looked at it in a very interesting way, and it's something I've been thinking about a lot. We've known in the past this idea of sharing. I read an article, I choose to share. To me and to them, that's advocating. That's saying, hey, I think you should read this. What we believe this is doing is, it's not that same implication. It's sort of a softer way of telling people what's going on inside their head. It's a way of me connecting with my brother-in-law, but it's not a way of him saying, hey, you have to read this stuff. It's just him being more open about what's going on in his world. And so I've really tried to push myself to adopt that, and I actually feel kind of good about it. It's like, hey, I might read something in our gossip section at OMG about, I won't even admit what it is. But that I know about that. And hey, if you see me and that you're interested in that same thing, let's talk about it. Because I'm not that interested.
So do they actually have to post that onto their Facebook page? Or is it something that if they're on the page for longer than a minute, then it registers them have written that article?
As soon as you hit the page, it publishes.
Okay.
There is a moment, and I don't know what the delay is, but you can actually pull it out. You can also pull it out later if you want, and it removes it from Facebook.
So if we have, for example, as business owners or even representations of different organizations, if we go on and we have friends that are part of our liked portions, we'll be able to access what their interests are?
They will have had to add the feature on Yahoo. So you actually have to take an action to add it on Yahoo.
Okay.
And you have to be friends with that person on Facebook. The evolution of it, though, I think what you're asking is, can you see people outside of your circle? Mm-hmm. And we do want to do that in two ways. One is people you may follow on Yahoo. So let's say Jim Cramer is actually reading Yahoo Finance. I may want to follow him so I can get his activity. And then we're also going to be introducing brands that you can follow. So a way for our partners to actually be kind of a part of the content conversation. So you can see what the brand is actually reading. And in that scenario, you'll be able to see what your customers were reading.
So is that more like a Google Plus kind of thing, where you guys are creating your own social component within Yahoo?
I hesitate to say yes, because I don't think we're trying to compete for Google Plus or Facebook. But I think what you're seeing is elements of this are going to be a part of Yahoo for sure.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right, leadership training in action. So give me feedback on what you thought was valuable about what I talked about, or what you think might be a good insight for the group. Maybe there's something about your business that you've been kind of following with this stuff.
I have a question. In a lot of the sessions that we've been to over the course of the last 3 days, I keep hearing about Pinterest as a great social networking. And I'm a big fan of Pinterest, and I get the value of it for personal, social networking. How would I want to use that as a company? And what's a great way to, do you have an answer?
Yeah, I do.
You guys do. Please.
Yeah,
share.
so it has to be a pretty good fit. The content that you're looking to promote, or the service or product you're looking to promote, has to be something that has kind of a native appeal to Pinterest users, at least right now, where it's primarily women. So, for instance, I was helping a woman who was selling bulk spices, and she started writing a food blog, and she would publish her food blog to Pinterest, and then it would link back to the place where she was selling the spices that were then in the food, and her sales went through the roof on the spices that she promoted in her food blog. And sometimes it's very little traffic, but sometimes you get the right recipe and the right people in it, and you'll get, you can pass your servers really quickly. It's pretty amazing.
To go along to that question, Z Galleries furniture store, they're posting all over Pinterest now their products. So when I go on my home decorating board, or I'm searching for home decorating tips, I just see all of their products, and then they do like room design ideas, and then you can just click right over to their product and purchase it, and it's letting me do that. So
It might be because I work for a software company that,
yeah,
we aren't going to be selling, most of our products aren't going to be sold to a consumer.
right.
It's going to be big businesses. So,
I love those answers, and I appreciate that because you guys answered better than I would have been able to. So thank you. The way I'd add value to that, I think, is to just broaden it and say, I think the concept, and what we heard was 2 examples of perfect products for that audience. While the Pinterest does not exist for software and that level of kind of customer, what I think does exist are content environments across the web that are relevant to every product. So finding those content areas in a similar way to finding Pinterest, and then doing similar things, being able to post your products into that, or being part of the conversation in those environments, I think is a great kind of extension to what these guys are seeing on Pinterest. All right, feedback. Anything that you felt like was interesting or relevant to your businesses? Did you?
Oh, I just think that it's a great idea, because I know personally, like when I'm on Facebook, I'm on for my company, not necessarily for my personal self. So for me to be able to go onto Yahoo and see what my friends are reading, rather than being on their pages or looking at their tickers, it's a lot easier. So
Cool. Thank you. Don't be shy. I won't be insulted.
The most interesting thing I gleaned is, I sell it to my customers and talk to people about it, is context. The thing that's great about social networks is they create context around other areas of engagement. I run it, mostly I'll say my wife will talk to people all the time, and she'll say, oh, I saw that you did this and this and this, or I saw that you pinned on Pinterest, or there's no ice breaking anymore. The ice is broken by the fact that they're already interconnected. And from a business standpoint, you can create these areas of context where people can converge, and then if you can get one person who is a fan or a follower or an advocate of your product to connect in that context of your product or service or content, then the response rates are huge. And so being able to find those ways to create that context is really, really important. And I think that's where the smartest, I'm looking for people who understand that, both the human emotion and psychology side of it, as well as the marketing side. I'm paying you pay them everything you can right now, because they're so valuable, because they can figure out that context.
All right, you guys pitch them a job. I think I totally agree with you, and I think it's interesting that that idea of context and connection has happened primarily on Facebook brand pages or owned communities, and I think what we're seeing is we're trying to extend that outward. So JetBlue should own all the travel content within Yahoo, because that is the extended community. If this many people like you, there's this many people that are talking about travel in other places, and we're just going to use the same tactics to connect them. Any feedback on the negative side, stuff you think that's total bullshit and you think I missed the mark? Someone's going to ask. Don't tweet it, just say it.
It's not that we missed the mark, but in most of the sessions where we're hearing advice like maybe do a special, show you the value. I think one thing that I feel like we've been missing a little bit is the how and we've gotten the why, but for a lot of us who come here for even better ideas, especially for people who might not have a budget, that's something that I would like to know more about.
You can't use the thing.
We've heard a lot of great ideas, so don't get me wrong.
Yeah, concepts.
For me, it's having real results
Well, I'm gonna answer that with one answer, and I'd love to open for the crowd if anybody has any other advice. One thing that we see is a drastic, simple way to execute that most companies don't do in their Facebook pages is just sending out content. Like, send things that are relevant about your community or to your community, but it doesn't have to always be about sales. So I think that's a simple thing to do, and you don't necessarily have to work with us to buy that content. Content is fairly free on the internet. But I think that's a cool way to program for your audiences and do all these things. Anybody else have advice on how you might sort of be more real in marketing or things you've done?
I was going to say, I think that part's kind of bullshit. To be real accurate, I think you need to have the other person's best interests in mind, and sometimes that's not real to how you're feeling, and it's not real to what you need to be saying, but it's always about that other person. I always like to think of them as children sometimes, so that I can be kind and I can care about what they care about. So it's not, I guess, I get the kind of ethos behind that, but for me, it's not about being real as far as it's about me, it's about them.
That's great. Connect them and understand what their motivation is. I think that's brilliant. Any other advice on either that question or feedback on the session for the group?
On the open graph sharing stuff, I'd say that it kind of forgets the romancing part of it. At that point, when you just click on the link, you haven't given me anything yet. So I don't think you necessarily deserve to have it shared in any way, even if I'm not endorsing it by doing anything.
Yeah, it's a great point. We go through that a lot too. What is the value you're giving to somebody for doing something? What I do think the value is being able to, if you share the content that you're sharing, you get to see what your friends are reading. If you don't get to see what your friends are reading. So the value you get back for sharing is that you get to see more. And I think the principle what you're talking about is absolutely dead on. You have to give, like Aristides has to give you something. Totally. Anything else?
I think you're just scratching the surface on the whole celebrity notion, and I'm not talking like pop culture celebrities, but business celebrities and niche celebrities. Everybody follows people on Twitter for a big reason people follow people on Twitter is they filter the news and they're interested in seeing what people who they respect and admire are reading. And I think there will be a huge push to see. I want to know what I don't like Jim Cramer, but they're a lot better investors than Jim Cramer. But I may want to read what they're reading, particularly on investing or in business. Being able to follow thought leaders and see what they're reading would be really valuable without having them have to go out and actually tweet about it.
Totally agree. Fantasy football is a place where we hear a lot of that too. People want to understand what our fantasy writers are reading.